All right, today we're diving into South Africa's intelligence community. Now, this is a really complex and, let's be honest, often misunderstood web of spies, analysts, and investigators. They're all tasked with keeping the nation safe. But how does it actually work? Let's untangle it. It's a huge question, right? Who's really on the front lines protecting a country from its biggest threats? Is it the spies? The soldiers? Maybe the police? Who exactly is standing guard when you're talking about everything from foreign espionage all the way down to local organized crime? Well, the thing is, the answer isn't some single, all-powerful agency like you see in the movies. Nope. It's actually a sprawling, interconnected network where every single part has a very specific job to do. So our mission here is to map out this web so you can see exactly how all these different pieces are supposed to fit together. Okay, so let's start at the top. We're going to look at the agencies that deal with the biggest picture stuff, the major threats to the country itself, whether they're coming from outside its borders or from right here at home. So, right at the center of the civilian side of things, you've got the State Security Agency, or the SSA. You can think of it as the country's main spy agency for anything that isn't strictly military. And get this. It reports directly to the presidency, which just goes to show you how critical its work is for the biggest decisions being made. What's really fascinating about the SSA is that it's built to look in two directions at the exact same time. You've got the domestic branch, which is like an internal watchdog, keeping an eye on threats inside the country. And then you have the foreign branch, which is looking outward, gathering intelligence from all over the world to help understand global risks. Of course, civilian intelligence is only half the story. The military, naturally, needs its own very specialized information to protect its people and its missions. And that's the job of defense intelligence, which is a core part of the South African National Defense Force, or SANDF. Their mission is purely military. They are not tracking local criminals. They're monitoring foreign armies, they're assessing conflict zones, and they're working to protect our own armed forces from spying and other dangers. So here's the key takeaway. The SSA protects the state, while defense intelligence protects the military. Simple as that. All right, so we've got the big picture state guardians covered. But what about the threats that are, a lot closer to home? Now we're going to shift from national security to the daily fight against crime right on our streets. In this fight, you have two key players who work hand in glove, but they have very different jobs. Think about it this way. One is like the informant network, the spies who gather all the secrets from criminal syndicates. The other is the elite detective squad that takes those secrets and builds a rock-solid case that can actually stand up in court. First up, you've got the Crime Intelligence Division, or the CID. Now, they're a key part of the police service, but they're the ones often operating in the shadows, running undercover operations, infiltrating criminal networks, and trying to figure out who the big players are and what they're planning to do next. So once the CID gets that raw intelligence, it often gets passed over to the Hawks. Their official name is the DPCI. Their whole mission is to take that raw info and turn it into hard evidence. They're the ones building those solid cases against the masterminds behind organized crime, corruption, and other really serious offenses. So much of modern crime, whether it's drug trafficking or corruption, it almost always comes down to one thing: money. And that's where our next group of agencies comes in, the financial detectives, the ones whose entire job is to follow that money trail no matter how tangled it gets. So how does this actually play out? Let me walk you through it. It often kicks off with just a single red flag, a weird transaction at a bank. That gets reported to the Financial Intelligence Center. Now, if it looks like someone's dodging taxes, they'll alert the Revenue Service, SARS. And once SARS digs in and finds real evidence of a crime, they hand it over to the Hawks to build the case and go for prosecution. It's a pretty powerful chain of events. The Financial Intelligence Center, or FIC, is basically the central nervous system for this whole financial process. It sifts through thousands of reports from banks, looking for those telltale patterns of money laundering or terrorism financing. It's the crucial bridge connecting the world of finance with the world of law enforcement. And listen, where there's suspicious money, there's almost always tax evasion. That's where the SARS intelligence unit comes into the picture. As part of the Revenue Service, their job is to uncover all those complex financial schemes that criminals use to hide their money and make sure those illegal profits don't go untaxed. These days, crime and spying don't just happen on the streets or in some hidden bank account. A huge amount of it is happening online. And that brings us to the digital frontier of intelligence gathering, where the targets aren't always people, but electronic signals. Now, this is a really, really important distinction to get. You basically have one agency, the NCC, that does all the high-tech listening, and then you have another one, the OIC, that manages the whole legal and technical framework to make sure everything is done by the book. One listens, the other makes sure it's legal. The National Communications Center is the home of what's called SIGINT. That's just a fancy term for signals intelligence. These are the folks with the technical power to intercept electronic communications, which is an absolutely crucial tool for everything from stopping cyber attacks to tracking terrorist networks. But here's the thing. Intelligence agencies can't just listen in on whoever they want. That's where the Office for Interception Centers, the OIC, comes in. It manages the whole legal and technical process. So when the police get a warrant to tap a phone, the OIC is the body that flips the switch, making sure every single action is lawful. Okay, so we've got all these powerful agencies, right? Military, civilian, police, financial, technical. The big question is, how on earth do you get them all working together instead of just doing their own thing in their own little silos? Well, that brings us to the final and maybe the most important piece of this entire puzzle. Just take a look at how this whole ecosystem is mapped out. You see the different domains: national security, serious crime, financial crime, technical intel. Each has its lead agencies. But look at the one constant, the common thread that ties them all together, that coordinator in the middle, NICO. The National Intelligence Coordinating Committee, or NICOC, is basically the conductor of this entire orchestra. Its whole job is to break down the walls between agencies to make sure a piece of financial intel from SARS can actually get to the Hawks, or that military intelligence can inform the SSA. At the end of the day, NICOC pulls it all together to give the president one clear, unified picture of national security. So there you have it. It's not one single spy agency, is it? It's this incredibly complex, interconnected web, from the high-stakes world of national security and military defense, all the way down to the digital trails and financial footprints that define our modern world. Every single agency has a critical role to play. And look, understanding this network is the first step. But it leaves us with a much bigger and, honestly, a more profound question. In a world with constantly evolving threats, how does a democratic nation strike that delicate balance between keeping its citizens safe and protecting their fundamental right to privacy?